Hello, everyone, and welcome to our third week. Today we're talking about Parkinson's disease and fall prevention. And again, my name is Hannah, and later on we'll have Kelly join us. All right, so our table of contents today, we're talking about Parkinson's disease and what are the benefits of exercise. We're gonna talk about fall prevention and then some techniques to use in your home. All right, so Parkinson's disease, let's get on to it. So what is Parkinson's disease? This is a progressive chronic movement disorder that affects the cells of the brain that control muscle movement. Symptoms typically develop in individuals with 80% or greater loss of dopamine producing cells. And we're going to talk about dopamine and your substantia nigra really soon. So what this does, lack of dopamine, is it impacts our movement. In addition to that, we see there's a decreased production of norepinephrine, which is our main neurotransmitter of our sympathetic nervous system, which is our flight or fight nervous system. So that's going to lead to fatigue and irregular blood pressure. All right, so what's our substantia nigra and dopamine? Our substantia nigra, this is a portion of our midbrain. And what happens here, it's known as this dark substance, as you can see on the right-hand side. And that is where dopamine is being produced and synthesized. All right, so when we lose that color or that melanin in the substantia nigra, what's happening is a loss of dopamine, and that is leading to Parkinson's disease. So they will look at a scan of your brain and see what your substantia nigra looks like, and if it is dark in color, that's an indicator. Dopamine itself, this is a chemical neurotransmitter that transmits signals within the brain. And a little bit about it, it works with other neurotransmitters to coordinate communication between nerves and muscles to produce movement. So when we have a lack of dopamine, that's where we're not able to have that communication happen. And that's going to cause movement disorders that we see in Parkinson's disease. In addition to that, it also is our reward system. It helps with movement, as we mentioned, learning and attention, our heart rate, sleep, and processing pain. So Parkinson's disease in the United States, it is the second most common neurodegenerative condition, followed behind Alzheimer's disease. According to the Parkinson's Foundation, 1 million people in the US are currently living with Parkinson's disease. This number is expected to rise in the upcoming years, and by 2030, it'll be about 1.2 million people. On average, 60,000 people are being diagnosed each year, with an onset around 55, or later, just that's the average is 55 for now. There also is early onset Parkinson's disease to be aware of. And if that does run in your family, I recommend that you talk to a doctor very soon. Typically that comes around 40 to 45 years of age. Typically men are 1.5 times more likely to be diagnosed compared to women. That's just what they see on average. And there's a big cost that comes with Parkinson's disease. On average, the medications that you need to take cost around $2,500. So it adds up for sure. So some causes, there really is, it's difficult to determine a direct cause to Parkinson's disease as no two people present the same way. And it's a little tricky to diagnose as well. What they're finding on average is that genetics plays a role, and so does the environment and your lifestyle. For genetics, it's going to dictate around 10 to 15% of all Parkinson's. That's a really small little chunk. So that plays one tiny part. And your environment. If you've had a past head injury, that can play a role. Where you live, and if it's a highly pollution area, potentially that's a cause. If you were exposed to pesticides and chemicals on a regular basis, that's also potentially a cause. But again, these are all just ideas. There is no direct cause. Some early signs and symptoms to be aware of. Again, it is really hard to diagnose Parkinson's disease because you don't really just notice these things that often. And with these signs and symptoms, if you just have one of them, it's probably not Parkinson's disease. If you have more than one and it's happening all the time, then I would definitely recommend that you consult your doctor and just talk to them about what you're experiencing. All right, so tremor is a sign and symptom, especially a resting tremor. A resting tremor is something that when we're at rest, we have some shaking, and it's called pill rolling. You'll see it in the hands typically first. So we'll have this kind of front and back from our index finger to our thumb, and that's typically what the tremor will look like. And again, it'll start on one side first, and then it will go to the other side as the disease progresses. Micrographia, this writing really small, and the font of your writing, maybe it used to be larger and now it's getting smaller and your letters are coming closer together. That's also a sign and symptom. Insomnia, if you're noticing that you had difficulty getting to sleep and staying asleep, then that's an issue. And constipation is another sign and symptom. This is something where if you have it one time, okay. But if it's happening more than once and it's a consistent thing that you're aware of and noticing, then that's potentially a concern. Kyphosis, this rounding of the upper back. Overall, it's just stiffness, a soft or low voice, and then facial masking. So having difficulty with expressing emotions, something else to notice. So these are the early signs and symptoms. Here are the movement symptoms that are typically called the telltale symptoms of Parkinson's disease. The first being bradykinesia, and this is a slowness of movement. So with this, we're experiencing reduced automatic movements. Like when we walk, for example, we have like a natural arm swing. And with bradykinesia, we now are not having so much movement at our upper body. And with that also, we start experiencing some shuffling with our gait, and we're not having heel toe, and now it's just shuffling, which can lead to falls, which is why we're gonna talk about fall prevention later on. Tremor, I mentioned this earlier, but resting tremor. Yes, this goes away for the most part when you sleep and during activity. Typically, again, that appears as that pill rolling. And then rigidity, so stiffness in your limbs, upper body, lower body. You overall just have decreased range of motion. And this can also lead to that facial masking, so we're not able to express our emotions as well. And it impacts our sleep. So we are having a hard time getting comfortable getting to sleep, and then our body is stiff. And so we have a hard time staying asleep. All right, so there are 5 stages for Parkinson's disease. In stage 1, this is where we see tremors typically on one side of the body, a little bit of clumsiness too. And then stage 2, now we're seeing both sides of the body impacted. Maybe we're having a harder time with buttoning our clothes, shaving, brushing our teeth. For stage 3, loss of balance, falls are becoming more common. We're having that shuffling of gait happening. In stage 4, we might require more assistance completing our activities of daily living. So being able to take care of ourselves, taking a shower, toileting, dressing, we might need a little bit more help. And then stage 5, we now are having difficult time standing up on our own. We may require a walker or a wheelchair to get around for safety concerns. All right, so treatment. Currently, there is no cure for Parkinson's disease. What research tells us is that a combination of prescription medicine and exercise is most appropriate. On top of that, there's also a list here that I'm going to go down and talk about. So prescription medications, yes, it's something that you will encounter with Parkinson's disease. Again, that adds up to that $2,500 cost of Parkinson's disease annually. And these medications are typically trying to replenish the dopamine in your brain. Physical therapy, occupational therapy, surgery. There are some surgeries such as deep brain stimulation that has been shown to help some. Medical marijuana is something that's up and coming. However, literature kind of has some pros and cons about this. The pros are that it helps with sleep, which is a big thing, right? Sleep and pain. However, with the cons, it can affect mood for some people. So with that, vitamins and a good diet, especially a Mediterranean diet. So eating fish with plenty of omega-3s has shown to be helpful in at least maintaining the disease progression. And then exercise is always important, and we'll break down some exercises later on. All right, so for occupational therapy, so for me and Kelly, what we will be doing is that we are going to help people with Parkinson's increase the performance and independence in their ADLs, or their activities of daily living. We help with the motor system. So again, with that increased risk of falls, we're going to help decrease that chance and offer you some strategies to help in the home. For the non-motor symptoms, we can help address the mental health and also your sleep hygiene. What we'll do is we'll take a strength-based approach, and it's always client-centered. We can find ways to modify your environment to make it safer for you, maybe adapt the activity that you're doing to make it easier, and that way you can do it independently. And then always include meaningful activities. That's the most important thing, and that has shown to increase your motivation and help with therapy overall and the outcomes. So what are the benefits of exercise? Well, exercise is important, especially with maintaining our balance. Balance is a huge issue, especially with people with Parkinson's disease. It's gonna help with mobility and strength. It's recommended that exercising for at least 2.5 hours a week is encouraged because this helps to slow down that decreased quality of life that you may experience in the later stages of Parkinson's disease. And this is overall for majority of conditions with aging, focusing on aerobics, strength training, balance, and flexibility. And all of these aspects are incorporated into your exercise routines here at Tri Fitness Gym, which is important. With Parkinson's disease, the biggest thing to do is to be proactive. After receiving that diagnosis, establish an exercise routine early on. This is going to help manage the disease progression. So we're avoiding those later stages as much as possible in the beginning. So getting an exercise and a healthy lifestyle is going to help tremendously. So for aerobic activity, it's recommended 3 times a week for at least 30 minutes of continuous moderate intensity exercise. So this is getting our heart rate up, we're walking, we're potentially doing a light jog. And some considerations for this activity include a risk of freezing gait. If we are shuffling and we just kind of freeze, then our feet can get on top of each other, we can trip and we can fall. Low blood pressure is something to be concerned about also, because with that, we have an irregular blood pressure in general, and people with Parkinson's are likely to experience orthostatic hypotension, which is where we go from sitting to standing, for example, and then we have this loss of blood pressure and we can potentially pass out. So it's something to be considerate when doing exercise. For strength training, 2 to 3 times per week for at least 30 minutes of 10 to 15 reps is recommended. And we want to target our major muscle groups. So using those free weights, resistance bands, suspension equipment, or our body weight is going to be recommended. Considerations, postural instability. If we're not feeling controlled at our trunk, then that's something to be aware of. And maybe we don't do activity standing up. Maybe we do it sitting down if we're not feeling stable that day. All right, now with balance, 2 to 3 times per week with daily integration, that's important because doing it at the gym 2 to 3 times per week is good, but doing it at home also in your natural environment is definitely recommended. We want to encourage you to do dynamic balance, some weight shifts, changing positions, and always doing large movements. That's a big thing with Parkinson's disease, is that we see smaller movements in general because we're not having that dopamine sending signals to our muscles. So it's harder to produce large movements. So the larger movements you do outside your base of support, that's helpful for your balance. It challenges you, and it also will just produce a greater movement and go outside your box. Some considerations: if we're having difficulty with our cognition and we are unable to attend the activity, it is recommended to have someone there with you doing the activity so that way you can be supervised and help with safety. And the last thing is stretching. Also recommended 2 to 3 times per week with daily integration, definitely. We recommend a sustained stretch with deep breathing after activity, and then dynamic stretching before exercise, definitely important. If you see that you have some kyphosis and you have more of a flex posture, just take it easy, don't push yourself. Also low bone mineral density is important too to consider, especially because we want to avoid that forward flexion of our trunk and reaching for our toes. We want to avoid having stress fractures at our spine. Yeah. Some complementary forms of exercise that research has shown has been beneficial is boxing, dance, yoga, hydrotherapy, and Tai Chi. All of these forms of exercise are going to encourage large, powerful movements. And that's something that has shown to be beneficial and, again, managing the disease progression and helping with your balance and your mobility overall. All right. Also, for additional support, I encourage you to check out the Houston Area Parkinson's Society Foundation. This is a source that you can use. They have education for families. They have education for individuals who just received a diagnosis of Parkinson's disease. They have sign up for classes for exercise programs and also support groups. Definitely important. So check it out if you or anybody you know has recently been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. It's a great resource to have. All right, and then going a little crazy there. All right, what are our references? And then Kelly's gonna jump in and talk about fall prevention. Thank you guys.
Alrighty, hi guys. So like Hannah said, I'm Kelly and I'm going to be talking about fall prevention. So here are some important statistics to talk about, just so that way y'all can realize like why it's important early on to prevent falls and different modifications that you can do to prevent the falls from happening. So 1 in 4 adults ages 65 and older report falling each year, more so women. And the reason is because women often have more brittle bones and they're a little weaker, and so it's easier for them to have a fall. 36 million falls occur each year, and about 37% of those have to have medical treatment. So they have to go to the doctor, they have to go to the hospital. Something happens during that fall that makes them seek out medical assistance. So that's not good. And more than 95% of hip fractures are caused by falling, and usually by falling sideways. So that's important to know. So the importance, so more than 1 in 4 older adults fall each year, and less than half of them are telling their doctor. So if you're not telling your doctor, then your chance of falling again is going to double, and that's not good. We don't want that. We want to prevent that. So falls are a threat to the health of older adults, and that can honestly impact your ability to remain independent, because if you're falling, you're not going to be able to do the things in your house, you're not going to be able to go out into the community, and you're also going to be putting yourself at risk for other health problems. And so falling doesn't have to be inevitable, as I give you some different modifications to do, so that way we can prevent this from happening. So here's a quick little checklist, and you don't have to fill it out or anything, but it's just some things to think about for your risk of falling, you or a loved one or anyone that you'd like to share this information with. So just think about, have you fallen in the past year? Has someone told you, such as a doctor, another medical provider, physical therapist, or anyone, said, maybe you should use a cane or walker to get around safely? They're not doing it to be mean or anything, but it's just because they may notice some different difficulties whenever you're walking, and they just want to improve your balance. Do you feel unsteady when you're walking? Are you having to grab onto objects? Are you having to grab onto a counter? Are you having to grab onto the door so that way you can walk safely? That's showing that, you're not as balanced. And so using something for support will help balance yourself more. Are you worried about falling? If you're worried about falling, then you're more likely going to fall. Do you have to push with your hands to stand up? So whenever you stand up, are you having to push off? Because that shows a sign of weakness, and that's not good either, just because that can be a major reason to fall if your muscles are weak. Do you have trouble stepping onto a curb? Whenever you are going to different parts in your house or just trying to get from point A to point B, are you rushing because you don't feel like you have steady balance? Do you feel like you have numbness or tingling in your feet? That's also something that can make you stumble and fall. Do you take medicine? Does it have any side effects? Because sometimes the side effects can increase your chances of falling. And do you feel sad or depressed? Because whenever you don't feel well and you're down, that can also be attributed to falls later on. So like Hannah had mentioned, some strength and balance exercises are the perfect exercises to start engaging in. So that way you have strong muscles, you have good endurance, and you have good balance. And this is all going to prevent falls from occurring. And then we'll go more into depth about talking to your doctor, getting some eye checks, some different modifications and hazards to remove from your home environment. So first and foremost, talk to your healthcare provider. If you've fallen, if you're afraid to fall, or you feel unsteady, you notice, whenever you went through that checklist, like there's a couple of things that you checked off, ask them, like, I'm scared that I'm going to fall. These are some reasons why. And let them know, so that way they can hear you out and they can tell you some better things and some recommendations that they are wanting to give you. Discuss proper footwear with your doctor and ask if you need to see a podiatrist, so a foot specialist. So the reason is sometimes if you feel unsteady, it could be an anatomy problem that you have in your feet. And so that's why maybe it's making you walk funny or unsteady. Have your doctor look at your medications and review the side effects. If there are any medicines that are going to cause you to have different side effects, whether it's dizziness, sleepiness, that's going to cause a fall, and we don't want that. And then after doing my research, I found that taking vitamin D3, which is different than vitamin D, But vitamin D3 reduces your chances of fall because that is going to help your bones grow. And then vitamin D with calcium demonstrates benefits in reducing fractures. So they're both really good vitamins to take, so that way they can decrease your chances of falling. Having an eye check. So I know that I'm very guilty about this, and I know that I actually use glasses to see, but if you don't have good vision, you're not going to be able to see different obstacles on the floor. You're not going to be able to see well, and it's going to make you fall too. And so having your eyes checked by an eye doctor at least once a year is really important. So that way you can have a good prescription, because if you don't have the correct prescription, even that can make things look distorted or even make things seem closer than what they really are or farther away. So you want to make sure that you do wear glasses or contacts, whatever they recommend. So that way you can see better and you can see the environment, because if you can't see the environment, then that's going to impact your ability to walk safely. And then if you do have glaucoma or cataracts, those are different conditions that can also lead to falls. So talking to your eye doctor will be really important. So that way they can fix that, put you on some medicine, and give you the correct prescription. Well, let me go back. Okay. So for different home modifications, these are just some things that you can do that are simple in your home to help you decrease falls. So first and foremost, removing everything on the walking area. I know sometimes, if you have kids, grandkids, anyone around, you'll have toys, just different papers, books, clothes, shoes, anything in your room, remove it. Make sure that you have a clear space to walk. Wear shoes that fit well and have good support. It's really important that, your shoes fit, because if they're really loose, then your ankle is not going to feel supported. That can make you wobble. And that can lead to falls. So make sure that your shoes have good support. Installing grab bars inside, outside your tub, by your shower, and next to the toilet. Having grab bars, so that way, if you notice that it's harder to get up from the toilet, if you're having trouble getting into the shower or the shower tub or anything, having the grab bars is going to allow you to do it safely. Use railings on stairs. Sometimes whenever you go upstairs, there's not any rails, or if there is rails, go to the side that there's rails. So that way you can hold on to them while you're walking up the stairs. Add lighting. If you can't see, how do you expect not to fall? You have to be able to see in your walkway where you're going. So add more lighting, especially in dark areas, and then add brighter light bulbs. That will help a lot, so that way you can see better. And then having things at an easy access in your kitchen, in your room, in your bedroom, anywhere, just having things that are easy to reach. So that way you're not constantly having to bend over, you're not having to reach above, because doing those things are going to put you at risk for falling. And then removing throw rugs. I know they look so cute, but they're actually really dangerous, especially for people who are using canes and walkers. They get caught on, and then imagine just toppling over. That could be really bad. So get rid of the rugs. They're cute, but they're not safe. Or if you really, really, really want it, use double-sided tape to keep the rugs down, and make sure that it's not a tripping hazard, because often people just don't see it and they get caught on it, and it can be really bad. And then use non-slip mats in the bathtub and shower. That's going to really help, because having water in a bathtub can be really slippery. So using non-slip mats will help decrease your chances of falling in the restroom. So now some different slip hazards. Of course, if you have a spill, liquid or solid, clean it up, or let people know that, there's a spill here. Please be careful when you're walking, because it can increase your chances of falling. Loose mats on the floors, like I talked about, just making sure that they're sturdy and using double-sided tape to keep it down. If not, just get rid of it. And then actually walking in the rain outside. We don't really have to deal with this, but up north, like sleet and snow and ice, that can also cause falls, especially since we're not used to those kind of conditions. You want to make sure that whenever it's raining, sleeting, or snowing, you're very careful when you're walking outside. Even changes in surfaces from dry to wet, or even wet to dry, it can throw off your balance. And so making sure that, if you see that it's wet outside and then it's dry, or if it's really dry and then it's wet and rainy outside, make sure that you're being extra careful and safe, and you're taking your time to walk to your destination. So that way, you don't fall. And then kind of like what this shows right here, like having these different cracks, different spots, and then just the changes in surfaces. So even from tile to carpet, those can be tripping hazards too. And then having dusty floors. If you don't have good grip on your shoes, then having dusty floors can really make you slip. So pets, those are big tripping hazards. I have a personal experience. I have a teacup Yorkie and I didn't want to step on her. And so instead I went around and I fell on my hip and I had a huge bruise for a month. And it was all because I didn't want to step on her. And I know all these pets, they're so cute, but it's not worth falling for and, you know, having to go to the hospital or injuring yourself, because I remember I was in so much pain because I nailed it on the ground. So making sure that our pets are not in our way of walking. Keep them in a cage if you know that you're going to be walking around and need a lot of things to do, like in the kitchen or in your rooms, or just keep them within your sight so that way you know where you're walking. Uneven or sloping surfaces, even whenever you're going up or down, going downhill is more likely to increase your chances of falling. Loose floorboards. So even like in the previous picture I was showing, not having steady surfaces, that's going to increase your chances of falling. Having holes and cracks, changes in surfaces, all that stuff is going to increase your chances of falling. So beware of those. Try to avoid them as much as you can. And if you're there, now you're more aware and you can go around slowly to prevent from falling. And then even bumps, ridges, and protruding nails, you want to make sure that you avoid those for sure. And then some other risk factors is just how the way walkways are organized. You know, sometimes there's like tiles with stones, with sticks. Being aware of how you walk and the different walkway is important. So that way you decrease your chances of falling. Even sometimes mirrors can reflect and get into your eye. And then if you can't see, that's going to impact your ability to walk safely. Poor and unsuitable lighting, like I said, those are big risks. And then even whenever you're rushing, whenever you're not paying attention and you're trying to do things really fast, that's when we make mistakes and falls occur. So make sure that you always take your time. It's not worth the fall. And then if you're really distracted, that can also be a cause because you're not paying attention to what you're doing. If you're really tired, especially as a side effect from medicine, you know, that's going to increase your chances of falling. And then the effects of alcohol or other drugs that can impact and impair your balance. And so just making sure that, you know, we walk safely, steadily, using things for support as you need. So what makes a shoe safe and unsafe? So I'm going to discuss. So having a firm heel and collar. So I'm going to show my shoe. So having this back part, you want this firm and steady. This is going to give your ankle support. If this is loose or very low, you have no ankle support, and that's really bad. And that's going to make your foot go from side to side. You need good support right here. A beveled heel to prevent from slipping. That's really important. So making sure even you have a broad and flared heel. So this is going to maximize like the contact that you have on the ground. So you want to make sure that the bottom right here is pretty wide. So you have better support, which is different from obviously a high heel because, you know, there is no support at all. So that's going to super increase your chances of falling. The bottom, so you want to have textured soles. Look at the bottom of your shoe. I know mine are maybe like a year old, so they're still decent. But sometimes you can tell right away, like all of this will be the soles will be worn out. And so there's no texture at all. And that's going to increase your chances of slipping and falling. So you want to make sure that the bottom of your soles are textured because that's going to help with the grip and walking. And then making sure that you have shoelaces. That's obviously going to be safer than not having any shoelaces. And making sure that the bottom, like I said, is wide and narrow so you can have optimal contact onto the ground. And then here's a picture, just a couple of things, like it's a typical house. There's a couple of hazards here, right? So you see this chair, it has wheels on the bottom, so that's not safe because if you're not steady whenever you sit down, you can easily roll the chair back and fall. You see this remote here on the ground. That's something that needs to be picked up because that can get in someone's way, especially if they're not seeing or where they're walking. This rug is, as I mentioned, a very big trip hazard. It's lifted up here. And so even just trying to step onto it, that can be a hazard. This newspaper, also hazard. These cords, making sure that they're covered. I know that they have like those electrical tape just to push it down. So that way, cords are out of your way and it's safer to walk. And then this lighting, we could, instead of having a lamp, we could have, the central lighting. And then here are my references. And just wanted to say thank you so much for listening and watching these videos. We really appreciate it, especially just because this is for our project and we're just here to educate and help y'all. We do have a super short, 5-question survey. It's just for school, just to see what y'all think and what y'all want to learn about. So we'd really appreciate it if y'all could fill it out. So thank you so much. And we really appreciate it. So y'all have a good day.